Okay, so we've been building a particular lesson set and a particular section of a basic algebra, basic pre-algebra course with students that have some very high needs. Now, let's kind of go to the other end of the spectrum a little bit with students that are very high functioning, but just understand that just because they're high functioning does not make them more computer or tech savvy. Sometimes you have to work to train them just as hard regardless of their academic level. So that's one thing. Second thing is, don't make the mistake to not include some of the more creative and some of the more less structured activities from time to time, even with those students who do have some executive functioning or organizational challenges, because from time to time they also enjoy that as well, as long as you kind of have plenty of backup. In fact, I spend 3 weeks, I believe, in my basic pre-algebra class doing nothing but building their own home using information from the internet, scale lesson plans, and working their way up in teams to build their extreme foam makeover for the foam core scale model house that I have for them. So that type of creative project, that type of hands-on project, sometimes that is not related to the academic level. You just have to make sure whatever project you do is not only set for academic level, but also for behavioral level. But let's take a look here. In some of my other courses, I do a number of different things. By the way, I also use Bitly's. Bitly's are just website shorteners. So, for example, the address for this particular document we're looking at right here is bit.ly/18-19 precalc. So all they really have to remember is 18-19 precalc, and it takes them to their calc book. This is really good because it's easy to remember. It's a sensible link. It's very short. Now, in this particular case, give you an idea of how I flip in this classroom. The day of the test, I assigned the entire class this set of videos. There are 5 videos, and they're all curated videos. They're from somewhere else on the internet. Linus Media, Vox, Half is Interesting, and Wheelhouse, I think. Something like that. They're basically videos that as I watch on my own time, I say, ooh, that has a math application. Ooh, that has a math application. And I just took those links and I saved them into a document. And then when we get to that area, I pull them out and I put them into the slideshow. And what we've done here is their only goal is to watch the video that is not math related directly. It's not about math. And I want them to find the mathematical concept in that video. So I'm not asking them to do any math. I want them to talk about math. And so I give them information and leading questions, etc. And then their job was to make a Flipgrid. Now, if you're not familiar with Flipgrid, Flipgrid is a program that simply allows students to take up to a 90-second video. And so their job was to record their 90-second, what did you find? What do you think about that? How do you think it applies? 90 seconds. They have to come up with how best to effectively communicate math. Then we did a follow-up with that in the sense that once they were all in the Flipgrid, they had to choose 2 or 3 other students, and they were to evaluate what that student picked out of some other video, because they didn't watch all 5. Their job was to watch 1, maybe 2, and pick one to review. And so in this case, the students got to choose what they watched, choose what they saw, but then they choose what they review, and they're starting to peer review. And so we had a form where they reviewed each other. So it's a great way to get started on some concepts before you dig down into the nitty-gritty. It's also a great thing for science or math because there's some great animations that you can get off the internet that are far better than anything you could do on your own. This particular animation, yes, is intro, but I've probably referred back to this particular animation about 4 times in this past chapter. Right now we're talking about applications and Ferris wheels. And so when this animation helps them visualize that even though the Ferris wheel is in one place, if you stretch it over time, the car actually makes a sinusoidal curve. So things like this, that otherwise you'd have to send them a link, or you'd have to put it in Google Classroom, or you'd have to somehow put it on some extra thing. It's built right in here. Everything is accessed right from a single place. And that's what you need to think about when you're talking about building a flexible environment and a flexible framework for your flipped classroom. Now, we talked about homework in the last section. I said, hey, I don't use book homework a ton. Well, I don't, because book homework is what I consider dumb homework. It doesn't know whether they get it right or whether they get it wrong. It doesn't give them any feedback, and there's no interaction. On the other hand, let me explain to you this idea of Delta Math. So this might be for math teachers only for just a minute, but there's a lot of concepts that apply regardless of your discipline, because there's some broad educational concepts that Zach Korzik, the guy that built Delta Math, Mr. Delta Math, came up with, and there's some really great, good educational practices here that are very important. Now, let's go down to trigonometry formulas. It's just random. Let's pick one. Double angle formulas. What this is this is an infinite math program. So it's really no different than a bookwork practice program. It's not really in context. It's not a reading problem. It's just exercises. Okay, you have to, in this case, know the formula for this and use the given information to find the answer. Well, the answer is obviously not 2, but when they submit the answer, because it's on a digital platform, and it's free, by the way, and it is not tied to a textbook series, it's not tied to anything else, it is so flexible to use, students can do it everywhere, and it gives them the correct worked out answer, and then they do it again. The way you set up an assignment for this is I only assign 5 problems a night. And the key is there have to be 5 correct problems, because it will keep going until they get 5 correct. Every one that's wrong, it will count wrong, and it'll keep track of that. But more importantly, there's some really great information that comes out of this. And that great information that comes out of this is the fact that I can see in what order they did the problems. 1 right, 1 wrong, 1 right, 1 right, 3 wrong, 2 right. I can see how long it took them to do it. So I can see, are they getting it? How long is it taking them to get it? Additionally, I can also determine, let me find a tough one here, that if a student, and this is something that I'm training them to do, if they get 3 or more in a row wrong, they're to stop, because clearly at 3 wrong in a row, they need more assistance, and it's more assistance than they can be getting digitally, or more assistance than they got in class, or more assistance than they got from their group component. Somehow there needs to be an intervention that's happening here, and I don't have to track this. The computer tracks every bit of this for me. The idea of technology is Flip is not about technology, but your job is to let technology do what technology does best. And the thing that technology does best is it allows repetitive processes to be recorded and repeated over and over and over. I tell the students if they want me to go back over the particular example or lesson, I'll do it an infinite number of times because YouTube rewinds. The other advantage to this is, whereas I've set it to simply take however many students they get, once they get 5 right, any order, collect 5, kind of like Pokemon, it's good enough. You can also have it penalize the student, that if they get 1 right, another 1 right, then 1 wrong, it takes away one of their right problems. So we're encouraging that consistency as well if you choose to move it that way. There's time versions, there's not time versions. But what we need to think about here is a program like this fits into the broader flipped learning mentality because we're not looking for a uniform number that we're giving to all students. What we want is a uniform level of mastery. Okay, now, arguably this does not qualify as true mastery, but we're working our way there. We're working our way towards, I don't care how many you do, I want you to get this many correct so that we have at least a baseline of how much information you know. And so a program like this ties so well into what we're trying to accomplish with flipped learning because it's not about the everybody, it's about the individual. But because it's in a digital framework, it does not require excessive amounts of record keeping on my part. So, with that, we are also working on sinusoidal applications where I take real-life data that I find and I make problems out of it. Or again, now that we're near the end of the chapter, and they should have a much better handle on how the content of the chapter works, instead of just looking for the math like we did up at the beginning of the chapter, now they actually have to do the math. And so I took a screenshot of one component that they did, one animation, because their animations are way better than mine. I put in the extra information on here for the students to create a problem that was both real life. This is actually a 5.7 Hemi. I looked up the information on the internet because Google knows all. And I set up a situation where they could see it in motion. Now they see the problem that's pulled directly from the video. And then they're going to, in turn, going to have to come up with their own application in the next step. But let's talk about where else flipped learning comes in super duper handy. Because I already have a flexible format and a flexible framework for providing information to students, I had a student contact me asking how to do this particular problem. They didn't know where to get started. So I was able to simply do exactly what I'm doing with you. In 4 minutes, I hit the screen recorder and I went through and I helped get them started by drawing on top of the picture and sending that video out to the students for them to take a look at, for them to understand what's going on. So what I did was right here. I've had 1 or 2 people calling to ask me for just a little bit of help. From there, here's going to be from there you can find free amplitude. And so because they have access to the same information I have access to, and because I can use some of the same tools I'm using with you guys right now, I can send hints or tutorials that I'm not going to do the problem for it, but I'm going to get them further down the road. We just saved a day of coming into class and the student saying that I didn't understand, so I didn't do it. Well, because we have a flexible digital format, I can save a day of trouble by sending it out right now. So in fact, while I've been doing these, I did this for a kid. They sent it in, I sent it back to them within 20 minutes. They had their question fully answered. So just to give you an idea of some of the other things that can be done with your flexible environment, that once you get past building from scratch, you can really build quite a process. And the best part is you're building it for kids. So just make sure that you understand that this time that you're putting in is for you, in the sense that why do work over and over and over that you don't need to do? Open up that time to work with kids because it's for their benefit. So with that, that's the next blog.